On this week's City Skylines 2 o'clock, hidden water and power sources unveiled. Beware of invisible bottlenecks. Autobots and Decepticons confirmed. And did Colossal Order really predict Elon Musk buying Twitter? All of this with this week's special guest, Shawn Builds.
How's it hanging, dudes? I'm glad to be back.
Really glad to have you back as well. It's been too long. This week we have got plenty to talk about regarding electricity and water and all of the new stuff. And while there isn't too much that you consider groundbreaking, there are some really interesting new mechanics that the devs have put in. So what I'll do is I'll start by covering the basics and the bases, and hopefully you'll have some really interesting input on these. So first of all, fossil fuels. We have coal, oil and gas powered stations, again, each with different costs and pollution levels. For renewable, we're going to have solar, wind, hydro and the new geothermal power. And then we have nuclear again, as well as some power from waste incinerators as well. So my question to you is, are we surprised by the range of options that are coming with the base game?
Surprised, yes, but also they're going for a realistic type of approach. So I think people would call them out if they didn't like add the geothermal or, at least overhaul some of the existing ones and make them more realistic. That's kind of my thoughts on that.
Right, gotcha. So if you're going for realism, that my one added suggestion about power generation is if we're going to be burning fossil fuels and we're going to be using renewables, we're going to have geothermal. If burning poop will give us power, why can't we get power from crematoriums?
Oh, that's a little dark, I would say, yeah.
Hey, that's me. That is me. Okay, right. So all right. So we're happy with the range. That's good. Right now, new.
Yeah, let's stop short of the dead.
Now, new to the mechanic is a different way of handling the power and the power spread through the city, where we now have two forms of voltage. Previously, we'll remember it just spread from building to building, from power station to building. There was no real need for power lines unless there was a gap in the power, in which case you could just use that to hop across. That's a little bit different, or it will be a little bit different in Cities Skylines 2. So we have two different forms of voltage. We have high voltage, which runs from the power stations, which obviously generates the voltage, and down power lines. Then we have low voltage power that spreads along the streets in underground cables and via any manual cables that we need or particularly want to put down personally. We're going to need a transformer, robots in disguise, to convert the high to the low voltage or the low voltage to the high voltage. What's your thoughts on this new mechanic?
Well, I think it brings a lot to the table. I mean, again, they're going for realism, so you kind of, just because a building's touching another building shouldn't mean that it automatically gets electricity, right? Now, the low voltage, where you get the bottlenecks coming in at, it's been confirmed in the new Insight video that there will be high voltage underground power lines that you can kind of directly connect to some of your transformers. And as long as you place your transformers, routinely throughout your city, you shouldn't have too many bottlenecks. But if you're really trying to min-max that, I think that's going to be key, really, for sure.
Excellent. Yes, bottlenecks is definitely gonna be the thing. I can see power lines being used to actually bypass a whole chunk of the city and then have electricity spreading from the rear end of the city back in, or maybe possibly the planting of a few solar power or wind turbines on the other side of the city, so power can spread from both sides, is how I imagine that's going to work. But yes, capacity limits. I think you may have mentioned that a second ago. There's capacity limit for lines and transformers, meaning that it isn't just enough if you've got a power shortage at one side of the city to increase your budget or increase the modular power of a power station. It might be that the power just can't get up there because effectively the electricity or the pipe rivers I suppose you could think of them, can't carry enough flow through the city. I'm really taken by the possibility of hidden electrical bottlenecks.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, you're really going to have to really micromanage this, because the last thing you want is people just abandoning your city, right? So, and now it's not just a case of this house is connected to that house, and as long as I take the budget up, we're good to go. No, you really are going to have to min-max where you put your transformers at, where you're, and some people might like just, big power cables running through their city, but they have the underground option. But yeah, the bigger your city is, the more it's going to impact you, and you're really going to have to like really place these in key spots that you can get to easy that makes sense.
Yes, yes. Now, so we're going for a more realistic style build now, which I think we're all appreciating. I know there's one or two dissenters that are going to find this a little bit too complicated, but again, they think they did cover this in one of the very early dev diaries, saying while it's more complicated, while it's more complex, it's not more complicated, and most of these things, in theory, you can just let run themselves, and it should mostly not be a problem. As long as you're not doing some sort of really niche build, you should be okay. So in terms of true realism, one of the new assets is going to be an emergency battery station. Now, yes, I have seen breaking news on experimental battery stations that are popping up. Certainly at least one in America I'm aware of. But is this realistic enough at this time in our development to be including it into a city builder, or does it actually not really matter too much? Or are you imagining that we're going to have battery stations across the world in the next 5 to 6 years? What do you think?
Across the world, I don't know. I think as the world slowly pushes towards more renewable energy, I think it'll kind of have to be a must, because if you think about it, I mean, if you're only going, let's say let's say you founded BonBonB land, and there was just a brand new country that you owned, and you want to do only, renewable energy. Well, you'd have to have a battery station. You would have to, or like in the game, you're just not going to have power at night. It's just not going to happen because there's no solar, unless you have a bunch of wind, and then you're going to have a bunch of wind turbines on so there's a lot of things that there is realistic about it, but it's very niche in certain areas right now. But I think they're early into this, I guess, slope, this bell curve, and eventually it's going to tick into more renewable energies for like the masses, I think. So I think they're just ahead of the curve.
Yeah, well, I'm really liking. I did allude to it earlier about having like a wind farm on the opposite side of your city from the main power station, is having a mix of power supplying your city. So maybe you'll have a fossil fuel, maybe you'll have a nuclear, but you'll also have maybe a couple of solar farms, maybe a wind farm, maybe a hydro dam, and just a whole selection of different power sources, so that when one drops off, another one can step in. And I'm thinking, personally, I don't mind the emergency battery station as just a little addition, even if I am just including it as part of the meme build for the actual power station itself. It's an addition within that, and then forgetting about it and just having it there might be
Aesthetics.
Yeah, indeed. So anyway, power is now not just something that we use for our city. Power can also, if we have enough of it, can be sold. We can trade it out via outside connections, so it could be a little money earner for us as well. On the other side of it, if we are connected up with our power lines being hooked to an outside connection, if we're running a little bit low, we can buy in surplus electricity, although that apparently will work out as quite expensive. So trading of power, what do you think to that?
You know, I'm kind of mixed on it. I'm kind of old fashioned, so I kind of feel like that's just one of the things your city should have to have. If you can't manage that and you're relying on outside, then you should have to pay the cost. You know what I mean? So like I feel like it's a good balance. I like that they have the like you're able to connect it, because there's going to be some really niche builds out there, right? So I like the fact that you can connect outside. I like the fact that you can sell and trade back and forth. But I don't want that to be a mandatory feature. I would, because I'm old fashioned. I would like for myself to just, I don't mind selling it, but I don't want to have to barter, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think you've got the point right on the nose there about niche builds. There are going to be some builds that maybe somebody's trying to recreate. I'm just trying to think. Something like if you're doing the Gibraltar build where you've got very limited land mass and they haven't got a power station there, they're importing their power from Spain, then to be able to buy the power for that particular, so there will be definitely going to be niche builds that will that you'll be able to use that mechanic.
Venice comes to mind for me.
Venice is another one, indeed. Yes, spot on, spot on. So there are going to be some, or maybe forget some, many many builds, but not having to rely on it and just having it. I think a lot of these things are very, very much optional. Anyway, so importing and exporting is of the power directly is what we got there. Then fuel logistics. So in terms of powering up your fossil fuels power stations, well, we're used to having extra trucks on the road. So we're looking at bringing in coal or gas or whatever from your specialised industry or from import and export as well. My thought here is, to take a few trucks off the road, how about having pipelines? This is something that you think the devs will put into the game. Pipelines from our gas refinery straight through to the power station. And what are your thoughts there?
To be honest, this is one of the things I've kind of kept in the back pocket. I haven't really talked about, because all these outside connections, all these exports, imports, back and forth. It's surprising to me that it's not a thing. Now, it might just be that I don't know. It just seems like with like a lot of in the news and stuff like that, all you hear about is pipelines and this like that, and they're really kind of a strategic, in a real world for military usage and also for economic usage. So it's kind of like, why wouldn't they have that in there? If you can connect power, you can connect water, you can, do all that. Why wouldn't you be able to just pump an oil pipeline or a natural gas pipeline? Or why couldn't you just frack on your own land? You're like, there's a lot of things that there should be in, but, the game's early, a lot of DLCs, so.
Yeah, of course. And then we've got the modding community, and I have
Right.
no doubts that there will be somebody who will provide us with pipelines from specialised industry through to power stations. Right, okay. Now, spikes in demand have been mentioned. What they've spoken about is in cold weather, houses need more heating. In warm weather, buildings need more air conditioning. But I'm going to ask you, what about the other peaks and troughs, the day cycles, where there's less power used at night? Do you think that will be a mechanic that's built into the game, or do you think that will have been overlooked?
you know, they mention a lot about like different times citizens come home and they leave and stuff like that. So I kind of feel like there should be like this area of town or even this building maybe uses a certain amount of power more often in this certain time of day than another time of day. But is it going to be, even if that's in the game, is it going to be realistic enough to give a variety of different, because you can look at an apartment building and see all these different people in there. What if some of them work third shift? What if some of them are college students? So it's like, I don't know if they're going to go that in depth with how they could potentially do it, but it's a very, very intriguing thing to see and wait for, because it's one of those things that's like, if they can get that right, or if they can even include that in the game, everybody's mind's going to spin. I mean, what else are we going to find? That type of thought.
Can't wait to get my hand on it. Really can't. So, right, so kind of moving on. There's one more thing in electricity, but that also ties in with water. So let's just talk about water briefly first of all. In general, water is very similar to Cities Skylines 1. We can pump, we can draw. We're going to have water towers, but the devs say this is going to be a very limited water supply. Now, I personally would like these water towers to be very much like what is going to be the GNU groundwater supply, where water towers hold a certain amount of water, and then over the course of the day, this drains out and then refills at night. What do you think on that, very briefly?
I would like for it to be that way. It would make more sense. And, and also, if you look like at New York, a lot of water towers, like they all use like this sort of gravity that kind of like drains all the water from the water towers down. And so you get like less water pressure as you go up into an apartment building. And it's a feature of that geography. But I kind of wonder how impactful the water will be now of course not on that level, but on that same train of thought, like, will it deplete over time? Should it deplete over time even? That I think that'd be a better question. Should it? I mean, I don't know, I mean, some people get a little complicated, but I mean, there's so many options. It's really not that big a deal. I encourage more realism,
Indeed. Yeah, so the other one I just mentioned that there are new groundwater deposits where we can draw water straight out of the ground, but only in these areas where there are deposits. But also we can use those deposits for geothermal energy, which I think we've both already agreed is a great new boon. But what do you think of the mechanic of just being able to draw geothermal energy from any water deposit?
From any water deposit? Oh man. Well, I mean, I'm not familiar on the intricacies of a geothermal myself and how all that goes. So I really can't speak to, which bodies of water it should be using. And so I just have to refrain from actually answering that because I don't want to make myself look dumb.
Oh, bless you. Well, I mean, I'm not far beyond that, but yeah, it seems an interesting thing. I'm glad it's been included though. That's my general thought.
100%, yeah. 100%.
But one thing you may have an opinion on though is how the groundwater is going to be located. Now, as a map making channel and as a map maker myself, I'm wondering whether this is going to be something that we paint in the map editor, such as we would do with ore or oil, or is it going to be terrain generated as we see from wind power? So what are your thoughts there? Do you reckon it's going to be something that's generated in the game or by the map maker?
I 100% think it's going to be like a map maker. You just click a button and it fills the ground. I 100% think it's going to be that way. It's too easy, too intuitive for new players to not have it that way. If you're going to create a map and you have to create your mountain ranges to where like runoff happens and water collects in a certain area, that's going to be too difficult for people, for the layman, for the average player. I 100% think it's going to be click, fill like oil. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, looking at just a couple of the screenshots from in-game, I think it's that as well, but it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me if it was a to ensure that maps will definitely have water. We will see. We will see. Mm-hmm. Very briefly, somebody joked last week, and they're absolutely right. I'm sorry who it was who commented, but I have so many notes here about with the wastewater treatment plant, where we'll be producing solid poop briquettes to throw into our incinerators, thus producing electricity. And they questioned about, would it be possible to export our own solid poop to other cities? What are your thoughts there?
Oh, that would actually be wonderful because fertilizer and there's a lot of waste has a lot of uses and people don't really know that. Like if you dig a garden and you make like nice little plants out your front lawn and you go buy fertilizer and mulch, that's manure. It is what it is, and so that would be a thriving economy in any good city, I would think.
Oh, fantastic. Brilliant. Right, now let's go over to something a little bit more real life. It's a little bit memey, but bear with me while I read through a timeline, because this is a timeline of curiosities from real life. Elon Musk, he founded SpaceX in March of 2002. Cities Skylines was released 13 years later in March of 2015, which featured a little blue bird social media app for its citizens. In-game, ChirpX, a free patch for launching a space rocket from your city, was released in March of 2018, thus tying the in-game chirper with a rocket launching company, ending in the letter X. This is not a coincidence the more I think about it. Anyway, Elon Musk then buys Twitter in October of 2022. Now changing the name of Twitter to X in July of 2023. So my question is, will the rebranding of Twitter affect Chirper in any way? Should the devs rename the app as Y? And do we really think that Cities Skylines predicted Elon Musk buying Twitter?
Okay, so they absolutely predict. It's like an episode of The Simpsons predicts. They definitely hit that square on the nose. And yes, I think they should change the app to the name of Y. Now, what I really think is probably going to happen, if I've been around video games for any amount of time, I know that there's a lot of Easter eggs, right? Just like Chirper X is space. So how do we not know that there's not going to be a rocket we can launch in the game and then maybe you get an Easter egg and you can change your Chirper logo to X, and it's just like a little meme or just a little dig, you know what I mean? Something like that. Maybe I don't think they're going to go too on the nose. I don't think they're going to get rid of their logo. Their Chirper's here to stay for sure. Yeah. But I do think that there's a lot of play to be had there, and I would think that it would be a miss if they don't do something with that, or at least poke a little bit of fun.
Oh, I absolutely really want them to, because the whole Twitter thing has become it's become popcorn, hasn't it? Just sit there, eat your popcorn, watch the whole world fall to pieces.
I know. But hey, a good Easter egg though, just change it to X. That'd be nice.
Anything else? Very briefly, you've got about 15 seconds to come up with anything that you feel should be added at this very last second. I'm not saying we finished a few seconds too early, but
desert map. We need desert map. We have groundwater. We have inline export connections. We need desert maps. Yeah.
Well, you managed to squeeze that one in just in time. Desert maps, I'm sure, are a thing. Anyway, time to say goodbye.
I love you guys.
And we love you too. And if you've made it this far into the show, why don't you show the show a little bit of love by clicking the like button? And of course, why not nip over to Shawn's channel and subscribe to him too? That'd be lovely also. I've been BonBonB, you've been very, very welcome, and we'll see you again very, very soon.